A motion on reaffirming council's position on Hamilton Police Service.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to read it in its entirety,
Thank you for
but
that.
it is before you, and whereas is basically, to sum it up, is that whereas we don't have full control of the operating budget of the police services, yet we tax for it accordingly, therefore, be it resolved that the council reaffirm their previous request, that the province be requested to amend the Municipal Act and or the Police Services Act and or enact special legislation to either enable the Hamilton Police Services Board to be governed directly by Hamilton City Council, or enable the Hamilton Police Services Board to be appointed by council comprised entirely of members of council or a combination of members of council and citizens as council may determine. B, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Hamilton Police Chief, acting chief in this case, and the Hamilton Police Services Board assuring that council will continue to respect and strongly support the police services under any form of governance, including abiding by the key principle of independence in law enforcement. C, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier, the Honourable Kathleen Wynne, and Yazir Naqvi for consideration, and D, that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Leader of the Opposition, Patrick Brown, the Leader of the all Hamilton area MPPs and the Association Mr. seeking their endorsement. And just quickly, back in 2012 or 13, I believe, this motion was unanimously supported subsequent to a number of issues, particularly surrounding the fact that there was a budget item that came forward, and our request at council to review or assess the matter was refused by the board, and they moved ahead without actually basically taking direction from this particular body. I know that a number of our members on the board did fight on our behalf, but as a result of being outnumbered, the voice of this council was not heard, and as a direct result of that, I find it unconscionable that we would tax the public. And again, policing is the number one pressure next to downloading of the city of Hamilton, and it is unconscionable that we tax residents of the city. I think it's actually foolhardy. It's laughable, but it's not known. So I'm all willing and ready to be held responsible for those issues that we can control, but it crosses the line when we're being held accountable for issues we don't control. And the police services, we don't have full financial control. So there is a discussion presently as a result of consultation that is being conducted throughout the province. And we're getting some good vibes from that discussion, which ties into this motion. As I mentioned a few years back, I'm all in favor of even divesting ourselves entirely from the police services board. It could be similar to the school board, and I have no problem with that. So it's either going all in or all out, but this hybrid model is outdated and not in the best interest of the public. And we need to review it. I know the province sees the light. The opposition members I've spoken to see the light. They're going through a process presently, and they have acknowledged that things are going to change. And the good thing about the change that's going to occur is that this city council has taken the lead much more sooner than that of Toronto City Council. So just for the record, this is a 3-year-old motion. The province is now moving forward towards adopting and making amendments accordingly to ensure that it's more representative of transparency, openness, and accountability, and not a hybrid model that belongs in 1975, not too dissimilar to DARTS and HECFI and all of these other hybrid models we inherited. So we've eliminated HECFI. We're in the process of mitigating the DARTS scenario, and now next on the list is the Police Services Board. You can't have it both ways. It's either all in or all out, but this hybrid model belongs in 1975. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I strongly support Councillor Marula's motion here tonight. I was on regional council in the 90s, if you can believe it, Mr. Mayor, when there was only 5 members on the Police Services Board, 2 elected representatives, 3 citizens. And before I got on the board, I strongly advocated for a change in the legislation. Of course, it had to be done through the province of Ontario, that at least 2 more members be added to our 5-member board here in Hamilton, in our growing city and region, back in the regional days. The province in 1995-1996 thereabouts granted the 2 additional members, which has led to today's current complement of 7, 3 elected representatives from the municipality and 1 municipal citizen appointed and 3 citizens at large from the province of Ontario appointees. So even then it was 5, only 7 today. My discussions back then with why even a police service board exists instead of being under the purview of the municipal council that represents the entire municipal citizens and residents and taxpayers of the city, the basic answer I got, Mr. Mayor, was that they were trying to keep the politics out of operating, governing, overseeing, meddling with the chief, the deputy chiefs, and 530,000 citizens of the city of Hamilton. Police only needs 4 votes to get past whatever he or she may need to get past. So to me, I mean, the political aspect of it really doesn't hold much water for me. And you look at some comparative boards that we fund, Mr. Mayor. The Conservation Authority has 9 members, 5 members of council, 4 citizens, and we give them only $3 million a year. The Hamilton Public the Conservation Authority has 11 members, 6 citizens, and 5 members of council. The Hamilton Public Library gets $28 million a year from us and has 9 citizens and 2 members of council for just $28 million. And here we are, a body that gets $162 million from us and only 7 representatives from the city. And again, a chief only needs to get anything passed, hypothetically, 4 votes. There's something wrong with this, with the system that's in place, and I strongly support Councillor Marula's initiative. He has, through his network, heard some vibes and favorable whispers and conversation going on. I'm hopeful. But Mr. Mayor, I got a feeling at the end of the day, the fallback position of keeping municipal councils away from interfering politically with how this should be run, how many cars should be in that particular neighborhood, how many drug busts should occur here or there. I've got a feeling the province may end up falling back in a safe position, but it's worth a try. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank
you very much. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And of course, this is a motion to ask the province to change the Police Services Act to make up and turn responsibility back to 100% municipalities. It's not asking us to do it, it's asking the province to change. And there's nothing wrong with that, I guess, but it has, I think Councillor Jackson touched on it, it has about the same chance as a snowball in you know where. There's a strong provincial lobby to remove members of council right off police service boards. And I don't think it's appropriate to get into that bun fight. There's just no winners in it. There's no appetite of the province to make these changes. You know, we've been trying for years to get the province to amend the Police Services Act to allow us to suspend without pay. And we just keep hitting the wall on that. We keep hearing it's close, but it hasn't happened yet. That cost the taxpayers of this municipality $500,000 per year to suspend with pay, and we're just asking without pay for very egregious criminal offences. And but there doesn't seem to be so far, and even an appetite to do that. But I do want to correct a couple things. The second whereas, it refers to the oversight by the Ontario Police Services Commission. It's actually called the Ontario Civilian Police Commission. So you need to get that right on the second bullet. It says that they said that the province provides oversight with the Police Service Act, which is true, but so are municipalities with the Ontario Municipal Act. You're asking for more accountability and more transparency. The Police Services Act doesn't permit transparency the same way the Municipal Act does it, for good reason, because you don't want the bad guys to know what you're spending on criminal investigations. and other privacy things like that that are very important that not get out in the public. City Council still does have final approval on the budget. In fact, in 2013, we did turn it back and we did get it reduced. That was quite a while ago. But I want to remind everyone, and Councillor Whitehead touched on this during the budget debate, this is the budget this year for Hamilton Police Services is the lowest in 17 years. It's at 2.78%. Fire is at 2.4, which was benchmarked as a comparable service, which it is because it's 80-90% of the budget is for salaries and wages and benefits. But fire is at 2.4, operationally 2.6. Paramedics, which was also benchmarked, is at 8.2% this year. So we are making some progress in attacking the cost of policing in Hamilton, bringing in the lowest budget in 17 years. So I think we need to recognize that that's important. It talks about other police services governed by municipalities, but nowhere in Ontario. It's outside of Ontario. So if we want to do a motion, one that would be helpful is to lobby the province on how we can in fact reduce costs. And one way would be to get closure on the suspension without pay in serious cases at the discretion of the chief and or the board or both. Another area which we've been trying through our association to deal with is court security. Why are they sworn officers? That should be contracted out. Crime scene security. Why do you need sworn officers $100,000 a year to do that? Robbery theft investigation. That could be outsourced. And cyber crimes. And so those are examples where we could pass resolutions asking the province to amend the Police Services Act to reduce costs, if that's the end game and the objective that you want to get to. And I'd be happy if the council wants me to do this, to craft a motion to the province on where we can save costs. But the big one that's really gets my crop is the suspension without pay, which our former chief championed in the province. We got unanimous support for our board, unanimous support right here at this council, and unanimous support for the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, and the same for the Ontario Association of Police Chiefs. But so far, the province hasn't seen its way to be able to deal with that. So I can't support this motion. I think it's you know, for one thing, get the language right, but it's not going to go anywhere when it gets to the province. And I think that we need to focus in on asking them to make changes where we can actually save costs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wholeheartedly support one model or the other, but again, I don't support the hybrid model. I've been there. I can tell you, even the demographics of how people are appointed on the board, reflecting the community. Right now, I think we got 3 people from one geographic area in the city, which isn't reflective of the broader community. So when I start looking at the makeup of the board, and the other tough thing is that when you got 3 provincial appointees, and this is not, and I don't want to make this personal because it's not about, because the relationships are pretty solid right now at the board, but this is a macro issue. This is an issue of where there needs to be accountability. And when issues break, the only people that actually get held accountable are the elected officials on that board, or the balance of this council. The 3 provincial appointees walk free. No, there's no skin, and they have really no skin in the game. And I think that's unfortunate when you're looking at a real, true, accountable process. That if you have no way of being held accountable, then clearly the weight of your decisions are going to be made to be different than those that are held directly accountable by the electorate. So I think that's a broken model. I really believe that, I'm not so cozy about bringing it in, but I think we need to make a statement. I prefer actually to, putting it completely out and give them the taxing authority and let them be elected and let them be held accountable for the service they provide. Having said that, this is the motion before us today, and it's not dissimilar when you think about it. The Police Services Act will still regulate. There'll still be issues on operations. It'll be very strict, so it's going to be really hard to deal or interfere with the operations of police services if it was brought in, because those mechanisms are already in place, regardless if it's the current model or if it's brought in. And we currently have a model. It's called the Board of Health. We sit around this table as a Board of Health, and we have fiduciary responsibilities within that model. to make decisions and meet the targets of the province of Ontario, as well as our own self-directed targets. So the model already exists. It already works. And when you take a look outside of this province of Ontario, there are many cities that in fact are running the police services. But the bottom line for me, and it really boils down to, if you got skin in the game, then you're going to be feel more accountable for the decisions you make. If there's no repercussions for individuals that may not be frugal, but they sit on the board and attend conferences and contribute in conversation, but they can walk away and not feel any of the pressure. I think that's inherently unfair. I really do. And I think it's time that we change the model. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I would have to say that I certainly agree with Councillor Ferguson that there is a very strong lobby currently organizing around this issue, and I would suggest, having had the opportunity to drop into the recent so-called consultation here that they had in the city regarding the Police Services Act, that the lobby is the police associations themselves. The lobby is the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, who have a vested interest to not see this shift. And so I fully support this motion. It's a reaffirmation, so I'm going to only conclude as a new councillor. There was support around this table before. I'd be interested to see what the count was and when it happened and who voted for what. But as it is right now, I can understand why in the past, when there was opportunities to have input, why it would have been a difficult challenge lobbying Queen's Park. But this is the first time in 25 years that this Police Service Act is open. And right now, there is a call across the province to have more oversight, not less, more civilian accountability or accountability to civilian populations and not less. So I certainly would not entertain them having the ability to go solo on this and run their own show. That I would want to see this all in and it be what it was originally intended to be, which is a local service. A local service with local oversight and local accountability. And, hats off to Minister Yasser Naqvi in opening up this conversation after 25 years. If there's one critique, it's that their so-called in-person engagement, when they give our community 3 days notice, slip it in some place without having any community input or community advertisement, and I show up and the vast majority of the people in the room are sworn officers, it's a problem. So I would encourage everybody who's watching here tonight, the media and spectators likewise, to go online and fill out the survey. And if you agree that local policing should have local oversight, then say so accordingly. I know I'll be having the opportunity over the course of this month to engage citizens that I know that are interested in this topic, the many hundreds that came here on the issue of racial profiling and carding, that are very interested to know that we have closer oversight, because quite frankly, as much as an issue, and I would agree, the paid duty officers or the paid with suspension is certainly a problem. That's one tiny aspect compared to the overall systemic breakdown and systemic breakdown in trust and community relationships that we're seeing here across the province. So I would encourage the public to get involved in this conversation. I would hope council would reaffirm their support, and again, I'm very interested to see what that was like in the last term of council, so we can be clear to the province while it's open, while the act is open and while they're taking comment, that we have an official position from this municipality that costs are out of control and there's very little oversight as it stands now. So those are my comments. Obviously, I feel very strongly about it. I was very disappointed with what I saw in this so-called community engagement, and I hope that the community has an opportunity to at least engage online and not walk into a room full of police officers to talk about policing, which I didn't feel was a very safe space, even if they had the opportunity to show up, which they didn't. Those are my comments, and I'm sure I'll probably be on the second-time speakers list shortly.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. To be honest with you, I do support this. I just have a couple of suggestions on the wording, please, through the member. The second to the last whereas, if you don't mind, it's just when you put in words like maturity and responsibility and commitment, if we can just eliminate that one and the second one, the one below it, whereas the province allows city council, so just taking those words out, that just sort of takes the emotion out of it, which I totally respect, but I think it would just look a little bit more wordsmith-wise and more professional. I'm just throwing that out there. So those are just my suggestions. For my colleague who suggested about this being a motion for cost savings, I really encourage him to compose this for our endorsement as far as a separate motion. Cost savings, suspended pay, unnecessary sworn officers, etc. I totally get that, but I believe this motion is just to look at the governance. I believe that if we're going to be asking for cost savings, it should be a separate motion, and I would encourage Councillor Ferguson to please create that and compose it for our endorsement. So those are my comments at this point in time. The wordsmithing is just a little uncomfortable for me. If we could just clean that little piece up, I'd be happy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have myself and then Councillor Ferguson for a second time. So I really wasn't going to speak to this, but some folks have raised some issues that are a little concerning for me. And so, there's always been a tendency to dismiss citizen participation in our boards and commissions. So when I hear that, these folks don't have anything they have their own community reputations at stake when they participate in this board. So I think it's unfortunate that we kind of characterize citizen participation as maybe not as worthy or not as valuable as councillors' participation. So I'm hopeful that we don't go down that road. We have citizens engaged in a whole range of committees and advisory groups, and they all provide valuable service to our community, and they have dedication and commitment to the work that they're doing. And the Police Services Board is no different. These are good, sensible, reasonable people that are working on behalf of the taxpayers of this city and not on behalf of themselves, wanting to do the right thing to ensure that we provide the best possible policing in our community. So I just don't accept the notion that there's a difference between council representation and citizen representation. We all care about the same thing. We all live in the same community. They care just as much as we do. Having said that, I worry a little bit about the issues of why policing is actually put to an independent police services board. And so I wouldn't disagree with the councillor in the notion that if we're it can't be halfway in, halfway out. I think from my perspective, it's better out than it is in, and for a whole range of reasons. I mean, we're talking about very serious crimes that happen in our community that we cannot allow to have politicized. And you know what? The tendency to politicize these things already happens on the Police Services Board, and we shouldn't have that happen on a council basis because, it's fraught with all kinds of danger. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you take ownership of police services, you take ownership of all the problematic issues that happen through that agency in our broader community. And so can you imagine? I mean, just think about the kind of phone calls you might get on behalf of someone that's being either jailed or convicted or charged with something, and you're going to get a phone call and asked, you're a citizen representative, why don't you do something on my behalf on this issue? We can't have that kind of scenario happening in policing, and it's a very, very dangerous precedent to set. So I really worry about having this council be responsible for, the policing decisions that we are going to be dealing with. And you know what? If you say it's not going to happen, believe me, folks call on everything. This council is responsible for all the work that we do. Police Services is seen to be independent, and it's a governance model, but believe me, people will be calling you if we take ownership of this issue on an ongoing basis, and they'll be calling you for the strangest things. So that's a big worry, and that is why it is set up to be independent. And you know what? And I also disagree that policing is bad in the province of Ontario. It is not. We have a great police force. It is doing great work. The cost of policing, the difficulty in the cost of policing is the arbitration process and negotiated salaries. That has been the ongoing issue. The arbitration process is not our friend, and each and every time that we try to manage costs, they get a bump up through arbitration because they set it to benchmark against Toronto. 90% of cost of policing is borne by salaries and wages. So it's not hard to figure out where the cost pressures come. That's where the challenge is. That's the challenge that we should be addressing. And Councillor Ferguson, I think, has made some very good, pointed recommendations about areas that we should put before the province, where we can actually make some strides in savings. And so paid suspended police officers should stop. And I think there's some favorable review being looked at by the province of Ontario in that regard. Additional civilian participation in policing in terms of writing reports. Very, very positive, cost-effective way of reducing the cost of policing. So let's write those recommendations down and send them off to the province, because that's where we're going to have some immediate impact. And that's the kind of, I think, input that I think we should be bringing to the province of Ontario. I respect the notion that folks have been frustrated by the cost of policing. I think that's a challenge. And you know what? Many of members of this council have sat on police services boards and have had and been participating in negotiated settlements in terms of salaries and wages. And we all come out of it with an understanding that it is driven by the highest wage in the province, which happens to be Toronto, and the arbitration process that keeps it at a certain level, whether we like it or not. So what we should be asking the province to do, in my view, is helping us with the arbitration process. Maybe looking at collective bargaining across the province to maintain and control costs on the salaries and wages. There isn't a lot of wiggle room beyond that, because bricks and mortar and vehicles and guns and all the equipment they have is that other 10%. It is all about person power. And so I just cannot support the motion the way this is written. If someone were to bring forward a motion that kind of identified some areas where we could actually achieve some cost savings, and that's by regulation, they need to make some changes to allow us to do that. That would be very, very helpful, and I think much more realistic. I respect the fact that there's frustration around this, and that was born a couple of, I think, years ago when they came in with a high number, and there was some consternation about that. Budgets have been very much better managed since then, and I'll give credit to Councillor Ferguson that has done a great job of managing the finances and pushing on the service to ensure that costs are contained. And that's, I think, the direction we need to continue to go. So with all due respect, I'm not going to support the motion the way it's written. An alternative motion that identifies some specific areas where we can actually achieve some cost savings, I think would be a very smart thing to do. Thank you for that, and I have Councillor Ferguson for a second time.
And I have Councillors Green, Whitehead, and Marula for a second time added since...
Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to clear the record up on one issue that was raised by Councillor Green, and that was the public meeting held on the street check issue, and that it was attended, only by police officers. That was not a Hamilton Police Services Board meeting or a Hamilton Police Services meeting. It was a meeting called by the Ministry of Correctional Services, Community Safety and Correctional Services. I found out about it. I read it in the Hamilton Spectator. It was advertised for 2 days in the Spectator. It was advertised on social media. And the public chose not to come out. The police fraternity did. I was there. Both deputies were there. The association was there. But it was disappointed. I think the ministry was more disappointed than I was on the lack of participation by the public, because in their view, they thought they'd advertised appropriately, and which is how I found it out. So I just want to make that part clear. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I have the right order. Councillor Whitehead, Green, and Marula. Have I got that right? Green, Whitehead, and Marula. Okay, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, and certainly it was never suggested that the Hamilton Police Service organized that. I think I was very clear it was a so-called provincial review. 2 days notice does not a community engagement make. We have even our own basic protocols on how we would get information out to the community. I know I've been working, Mr. Mayor, very closely with the ministry on this particular issue. I only received an email that day, and it's not like I expected a personal invitation, but certainly more than 2 days notice in a basement in the West Mountain Arena for something this big and substantive deserves a little bit more engagement, and it's of no fault of the Hamilton Police Service or the members who showed up, except for, I would believe that if it's a citizen process, that in order to create a safe space for open and critical dialogue, that residents should have been given the opportunity to do so free of police. Police have had ample time and lots of opportunity to lobby at all levels of government on this issue, and they do, a very powerful lobby, and to have a room packed with police officers in a space that's supposed to be open and safe for community is problematic. And I'll say that. And if I can also just clear up another statement that was made, I'm not clear anybody around this table said policing is bad. That is a vast oversimplification of the complexity of this issue. What we're talking about is poor governance. What we're talking about is poor oversight. So is the governance bad at police boards? I would argue yes. Is the oversight bad in police boards and in police service? I would argue yes. Is policing bad? No, certainly not. The frontline officers I fully support and have great relationships with in our community. They work very hard and they work on the orders they're given. But when we talk about critical issues in terms of what our local boards are able to vote on as it relates to operations versus policies, and the recent tact by a coordinated effort by the Ontario Chiefs of Police to basically hijack police boards with this idea that everything is operational and nothing is policy, is bad governance. And that's what I'd like to see this statement be made on. And certainly I fully support cost recovery and cost savings that have been brought up by Councillor Ferguson, and I would support that motion at that time. But this is about the Police Service Act. This is about a once in a 25-year opportunity to comment on the gaps in governance as it relates to policing. And this idea that somehow by bringing it into elected officials that we would politicize crime, well, I would argue that if you're already there as elected officials, then that's there. And quite frankly, further, when you have partisan provincial appointees, who I would support Councillor Whitehead, have less accountability than we do as elected officials, that there's a greater opportunity for this so-called corruption if it's brought out, if that's what we're suggesting. I would dismiss that argument wholesale to say that we would be able to have that conversation around this table on the policies as it relates to local policing. And that's what this is about. So let's not go down the road of oversimplifying policing is bad, policing is good, we're here to get the bad guys, we're here to, protect the good guys. No, this is about governance of a major budget line item that our taxpayers pay the burden on. And so I just wanted to make sure that that's fully clear, that the support for police in this community is very strong, and that the criticisms, particularly as brought up in the past, we've seen here, probably 200, maybe 250 residents had some concerns. So here's an opportunity for us to reaffirm something that I'm sure many of you have already voted on once. I would love to see that vote. And I'll fully support it again here as a new councillor in Councillor Marula. Is it a political statement? You're absolutely right, it is. Politics are political. And right now the Police Review Act is open, and I encourage everybody to make that political statement that we need to take back control of what I think is a bit of a Wild West when it comes to what chiefs are making decisions on with the support of their lawyers and so on and so forth between what's operational and what's policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to highlight a couple of things. So a lot of the savings that you identified, whether it's the suspension or whether it's the arbitration, let's be clear. We've already passed those resolutions. We can do it again if you want, but AMO's already taken that position and is speaking very loudly on the uncontrollable cost of policing. So it's already an issue at AMO. Those positions that have been put forward, and I just heard around this table, has already been endorsed and supported by this council, and therefore is a part of the AMO resolution. So I'm not, if you want to duplicate it, I'm okay with that. We could chew gum and walk at the same time. This is an issue of governance. And when we talk about governance, we're talking about a $158 million budget. Okay, let's be clear. That's a significant amount of money. We heard Mr. Mayor speak to us in regards to the budget and how well we've worked together in collaboration and made great decisions. And we might have our differences, but we conduct ourselves very well. I don't have contempt for any councillor around this table. I believe that whether we have police services in-house, we would treat it the same. Why would we treat it any differently? And the models already exist. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel. So let's not put straw man arguments out there when in fact these are models that are tested and are utilized across North America. So and let's be clear in respect to accountability. Not once, and I'm going to say this, the whole time I've been on that board, not once have I had a provincial appointee say that budget's too high. Not once. The people fighting the fight are the elected officials on that board. Because we have an understanding of the affordability issues in our community. Because we get to see the data. We get to see the suffering. And so we have that understanding that we bring to the table. Unfortunately, when you provide appointments that don't have that depth of understanding in this community, and they're dealing with financial decisions, they're more than likely when a chief comes forward, and this is my experience, I'm being absolutely sincere. Every time the chief came forward with the budget, that board was ready to ramp it through and not even have a discussion. Now, it's changed a bit because we have new leadership with Councillor Ferguson, and I'll give him all the credit in the world. But what I'm saying is absolutely true. That not once in the whole time being there has there been a provincial appointee that had indicated, even when we had those high increases, that they were ready to rubber stamp it and have it come right away. They were quite fine with it. I think there was editorials and cartoons in the Spectator. So the issue for me is, if they don't feel that they need to be accountable for the amount of money being spent or the decision being made, what is their accountability? I mean, I would pose this question to the mayor. I'm not suggesting they're evil. I'm saying they're great people that get appointed on the board and have a perspective and apply that perspective. I have no issue with that. But they don't have the broad understanding of the pressures and the social issues and all the other array of things that we bring to the table when we sit on the police board. So it's easier for them, in my humble opinion, certainly in the 12 years that I've been there, or 10 years that I've been there, to rubber stamp anything the chief comes forward with. Because that has been, I mean, the press, the media knows that. I'm not making this up. The only people that are being critical are the councillors or the elected officials on that board to try and pull back on those budgets. So accountability to me is important, and you can't get more accountable than every 4 years going and testing the will of the people, and if they're satisfied with your performance, they're going to re-elect you. If they're not, you're going to get turfed. How does that work for appointee? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not going to get emotional about it, but Councillor Ferguson supported this last term, so he's obviously, the way it's worded exactly, so if he has concerns about the way it's written, or an omission of a comma or a period or a word, that's his problem. Everybody supported it as it's written, and we'll acknowledge corrections with respect to the emergency services. Now that he's flip-flopped on it, now we can work on consistency rather than the unpredictability and chaos that flip-flopping can create. And in looking at this from an integrity standpoint, what the actual issue here is not micromanaging. What you're proposing, Mr. Mayor, is exactly what we're trying to prevent. I'm not here saying that City Council should tell me take a count on pens or pencils or paper clips and cut the budget. That's micromanaging. What I'm saying is we need to create a governance model that's more in tune with what the public believes. Right now, this is deceptive. The public believes we control our operating budget. The reality is we don't. So if you want to continue this charade and actually continue to be part of the problem as opposed to a solution to enlightening the public about our limitations and how this governance model contributes to that, that's your prerogative, but that's irresponsible. You have an opportunity to communicate effectively, collectively, all of us on council, to the public and encourage people to tune in, not to tune out based on the rhetoric I'm hearing around this table. Because they need to tune in about what they're paying, who pays for what, and who controls what. At present, 50%, 50 cents of every dollar that people in this city pay in municipal taxes, we don't control. By you rejecting this motion, you're endorsing that particular nonsense. because anything that contributes to an awareness and reversal of that particular issue is responsible governance. And if you read the motion in its entirety, as apparently you haven't, or those suggesting that this hasn't been brought in entirely, to enable Hamilton Police Services Board to be appointed by council and comprised entirely of members of council, A, B, a combination of members of council and citizens, B, as council may determine, So basically the existing model, except we take the politics away from Queen's Park, and we take it on head on at the municipal level. Because most of the people in this city don't recognize that 50% of what they pay in taxes we don't control, yet they elect us on that premise. So we can micromanage, like as you mentioned, which I totally reject, because that's crossing the line and is not what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is a governance model that is more in tune with our budgetary process. And had you listened to what I said we either bring it all in-house or we take it all out of house, divest ourselves. So if that would ease your concern, I will amend that we look at full divesting ourselves from the process, as I stated in my statement, because that's the intent of this. The intent of this motion is to create awareness about the largest budgetary pressure we have as a council, and by extension the residents as a city, that we don't directly or fully control. There are issues with the province, obviously, as it's been mentioned about the Police Act. Well, all of our problems are related to the province, because 50% of our budget is related to the downloading and boards and agencies which we don't have control over. We see with the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the nonsense, the victimization of the incompetence that we've been subjected to with their budgetary flaws. So this really is simply trying to right a wrong, trying to bring ourselves out of the past and into the future, and being in concurrence with some of the most progressive cities in Canada. You're right, nobody in Ontario is progressive. And that's the point. And that's why we're going through a process of consultation in trying to ensure that when everybody here talks to their residents and go door to door, they can do so and say, yes, I can control your taxes, because at present they can't. It is a farce. And the ignoring of that and the not addressing it full force and ensuring that you're communicating so people understand, again, is very irresponsible. So do what you will with this, but the bottom line is what is before us is about governance. It's not about line-by-line micromanaging as you propose, Mr. Mayor. I can never support what Councillor Ferguson has mentioned. City Council should not be micromanaging the police board. What we should be doing is making it accountable to the people who elect us. And that's all I'm asking for. And if you reject that, then you're rejecting the notion of accountability, transparency, which we presently do not have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before we go down a road that I don't think we need to go down, I'd like to call the question.
Okay, I do have one other speaker. That was Councillor Connolly asked to speak. Would you kind of allow him that latitude? Sorry? Correct. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with that, as long as we can call the question after that, please.
Thank you. Councillor Connolly.
Thank you. I've heard a lot today, and I've heard a lot that I didn't like to hear, and a lot that I did like to hear. I think we're going way too deep into this as far as talking about the personalities or whatever of some of the members and what their responsibilities are. But I do like the idea of having accountability with the council. I don't know what that would take. I don't know if it would be 7 councillors on it or 4 councillors. I don't know. And I really don't care. We got to get this to the ministry so they can look at it. And they're not going to pass this because Hamilton says so. They need most of the boards on side in the whole province. You know, we don't have that power. Toronto might have, but we don't. You know, so this is going to be a recommendation going there. Hopefully, and I'm suggesting that we send this to all the municipalities so they can review it themselves, modify it, change it if they want, and send it to the provincial government too. And it's power with numbers, and our number is 1. You know, we don't have that power, so I'm suggesting, I will support it, because I like the idea of accountability. But I really think that we should be making sure all the cities of what particular size gets involved in this thing, so we can go more unified, if that's the will of the rest of the province. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Fulsome debate for sure. So we have a motion in front of us, moved and seconded, standing recorded vote requested for. All those in favor, please stand.
Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Collins, Councillor Marula, Councillor Green, Councillor Farr, Councillor A. Johnson, Councillor Connolly, Councillor Pearson, Councillor B. Johnson, Councillor Vanderbeek, Councillor Pasuta, Councillor Partridge, sorry.
And those opposed.
Mayor Eisenberger and Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, thank you. I think that result is pretty clear. Thank you all very much.